Ben Pring with us here today. I have read his book. It's fascinating, it's erudite, and it is, I'll say, hilarious. He treats a very, very serious topic in a very accessible way. He's been, has a long history with this. He is currently with the Gartner organization and a Falmouth resident for 25 years. And perfect timing getting Biden to make that announcement this week, just ahead of your talk.
He got my memo.
Oh, good. So he's got juice on topic. So when Biden responds, it's good. But we're really happy to have Ben here this morning. Please stay around a little bit afterwards, for networking and talks. But with that, Ben, welcome.
Thank you very much.
For coming to the Cape Cod Technology.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much. Thank you for the introduction, Steve, and thank you first to Steve, another Steve, for making this connection and invitation, and then thank you to my neighbour Terry for making the initial connection to Steve. So it's funny how the world works, isn't it? Anyway, it's great to be with you, and as I say, as Steve said, don't let my accent fool you. I'm from England originally, but I've been here in this part of the world for 25 years or so, talking about technology, and traveling all around the world talking about technology, and this is probably the first time I've ever talked about technology on Cape Cod. So it's nice to be here and be with you all. So I'm going to share some thoughts about what's going on around this very interesting area of AI, and as Steve said, in the news, I'm sure you all saw what was happening this week, and perhaps you saw what was happening in the UK yesterday. Kamala Harris was with the British Prime Minister talking about AI, and Elon Musk was there, and so there's a lot going on, and very hard to sort of capture it all in 20-25 minutes and then give time for us to sort of talk about it. But I'll start with this thought. Anybody recognise what that is and what that means? I know it's early in the morning and you're in a school, so you don't want to be asked questions, but any guesses? Sorry? What does it say? What does it mean? This is the ancient Chinese proverb, "May you be cursed to live in interesting times." Because we are, as Mr. Musk puts it, living in very, very interesting times. I think what's happening at the moment is going to be what our kids and our grandkids learn in schools and universities in the future. In the history books, or perhaps the history chips implanted into people's brains, or the history downloads from the cloud, people will be learning about this in the way that we learned about Edison and Isambard Kingdom Brunel and all of the innovators and the extraordinary people who've moved our society forward in the past. This is an incredible moment, a historic moment. And again, if you had half an eye on what was happening in London yesterday, another Brit, slightly more important and famous Brit, King Charles, said that this is as big as the invention or the discovery of fire. So this is huge, what is going on at the moment. And I've long thought that the future is a little bit like a Rorschach test. If you know what a Rorschach test is, what do you see in this? Everybody sees something different. The future is a Rorschach test. What do you see when you look into the future? Do you see innovation? Do you see higher productivity? Do you see better jobs emerging? Do you see, in essence, the next level of human, organizational, corporate performance? Is this how we get to the future, a better future for us all? Or do you, conversely, see the automation of white-collar, no-collar jobs at scale and in an accelerated way, you see Silicon Valley becoming, in essence, the new Detroit, hollowed out by offshoring, outsourcing, technology, all of the jobs that created that society disappearing and emerging in an area that we think that's unimaginable at the moment. But 50, 60 years ago, it was unimaginable what would have happened to the US auto industry. Do you see, in essence, as somebody who should remain nameless said a little while ago, the next level of American carnage? The future is a Rorschach test. What do you see? That's a crucial question to ask. Because does this create some utopia that we've seen in science fiction movies for 1,000,000 years? Or does it create, alternatively, a dystopia? A future that, we've seen in movies and we've seen portrayed over many years. A world that perhaps none of us really want to live in. My response to that question, and my view of the Rorschach test, is that both existed in the past, both exist in the present, and both will exist in the future. Why, if this is true of history, why is it true of now? Is the future going to be either or? Why is it going to be one or the other? It's going to be both. We're going to have higher productivity through this technology, which I'm going to talk about. We're going to have better jobs. Our societies are going to improve and grow and develop. But at the same time, that wealth, that opportunity is going to be as unevenly distributed as it is today. There'll be pockets of huge wealth, pockets of huge joy and glory and miracles, and there will be other levels of American carnage. And so, really, the way to think about what's going on at the moment is that these are unstoppable forces happening in a way that none of us, individually or collectively or corporately or societally, have real control over. There's a manifest destiny, to use another American phrase, about what's going on at the moment. And my 14-day trial is over.
Bye now.
Speaking of control. I hope you're keeping on past the 14-day trial. This funny-looking chap, anybody know who he is?
Mark Andreessen.
That's right, Mr. Andreessen. He's the guy who invented the browser almost 30 years ago, that really popularized something that had existed for a while, the internet, but really popularized it by creating a piece of technology in which ordinary people could use the internet, the browser, and the World Wide Web. Anyway, this is something he said a few years ago: software is eating the world. What's that mean? It means that technology is becoming diffused into every aspect of everything we do. And software is this powerful force that really takes an activity, changes the nature of it, sucks the intellectual property of that into code. And if you look at your 401k occasionally, you'll see that really your 401k is being driven, all of the performance in that is being driven by 6 or 7 technology companies. Some people call them the FANG vendors: Facebook, Amazon, Netflix. All of the growth in the American economy is because software is eating the world. Again, a manifest destiny that we have no control over. Here's some examples of this thing called OpenAI, ChatGPT. You had a session on this before, and you're going to have some other ones. This is how it's manifesting in the real world, in our real world. Talking about 401ks. Morgan Stanley Wealth Management are using OpenAI to create financial advisors, to leverage all of the institutional knowledge they have through this software to curate it, to manage it, to deploy it. So your human financial advisor has far greater insight, far greater thoughts, recommendations, advice for you as an investor. And the technology is making that person's job much easier, because they might have spent weeks putting together a report for you. That can now be done instantly by this software. So that's one very good example of how this is rolling out. This is another one. Bloomberg, the big media company, they're using this technology, a 50 billion parameter large language model. I won't go into all the technical details of that, because I'm sure many of you don't really have technical backgrounds, but this is incredibly powerful technology which is being deployed against all of the institutional knowledge this large organization have, to really take it to the next level, performance level, the next performance threshold of what it does, media, investments, etc., etc. This is the voice of a top coder, somebody in the technology world, a developer. Just read this quote here. I'm in the top 2% of users on Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is a technology repository of code that many people use in the open source community. My content there has been viewed by over 1.7 million people, and it's unlikely I'll ever write anything in there again, which may be a bigger problem than it seems, because it may be the canary in the mine of our collective knowledge. So this is somebody who's understood for many years that software is eating the world, somebody who has skated towards the future, where the future is going, deeply embedded in the technology community, making a very, very good living. Somebody with a PhD in computer science from one of the Ivy League schools starts in Google or OpenAI or Microsoft, starts on $5 million. So this is somebody who's skated to this lucrative next performance threshold, and he's saying, I'm not going to be writing code in the future, because this technology, this ChatGPT, GPT-4, OpenAI technology, Microsoft Copilot technology, large language models. Don't worry about the terminology, that'll all change and is quite fluid, but it's going to change this high value added activity. That's incredible. This, you might not be able to see it, it's a little small on the screen here, is another example of this technology changing our world, software changing our world. This chap here, who looks a little bit like me without hair, so I'm going to be heading in that direction soon. This is not a real person. That's software, visualization software on top of this technology that can allow him to talk and allow him to interact with you. It's called Aiden. You see all the different types of technology being used to create him. When your Verizon guest comes in a few weeks, what Verizon are trying to do is to put things like this on the front end of their interface with us as customers. So we're not going to be talking to real humans, we're going to be talking to next generation bots. And probably we all hate bots today because they're so clumsy and crude and not very good, and they get so much wrong in the way they interact with us. But imagine a world where this person instantaneously can talk to us in whatever language. Again, think about what that does to the hundreds of millions of jobs around the world, not just in the US, in the Philippines, in India, in Mexico, and other parts of the world, where technology, software eats these jobs. Again, to me, pretty extraordinary. I mentioned Mr. Musk. Mr. Altman, Sam Altman, again, for those of you who are watching this closely, he's the CEO of the company OpenAI, now part of Microsoft, who have really taken this technology and made it real. The book that I wrote a few years ago, 7 years ago, which I'm really talking about today, What to Do When Machines Do Everything, this was the theory of AI. And now Mr. Altman and his 170 developers are the people who've made this real, turned this theory into reality. He's in a debate with Mr. Musk, because Mr. Musk was one of the primary founders of OpenAI. Some of you will know this history, some of you won't, and they had a falling out. But now, again, this type of technology, based on the underlying foundation models and large language models here, is manifesting in physical devices as well, in physical robots. Some of you will know Boston Dynamics. Does that name ring a bell? Yeah. It was part of Google. It's now, again, an independent company. If you haven't seen the videos of Atlas, you know those videos? Have you seen those? If that doesn't scare you shitless, pardon my French, I don't know what will, because that, again, is things that we've seen in movies, in science fiction, becoming real, and the collision of robotic software and these underlying technologies, language models, is going to be extraordinary. One of the big things that was being discussed and debated in London yesterday at the Prime Minister's AI Safety Summit, and Mr. Musk and Mr. Altman were both there, was the potential, and now not really potential, real danger that much of this technology is going to reap in the real world when we can create the next level of disinformation, fake news. This is going to be very, very significant, because did the Pope really wear a puffer jacket? Have you seen that image before? Again, this is fake news. This is technology making the Pope wear something he, I imagine, probably would never have worn. You never know. It's a silly example, sort of comical illustration, but once this technology can put into a president's mouth, you remember that famous Ronald Reagan hot mic moment, the bombing starts in 5 minutes? You remember that? Imagine when that's real, when Mr. Biden or whoever succeeds him says the bombing starts in 5 minutes. Will we be able to tell? Will we be able to know? Will we be able to control this as it seeps out into social media? I mean, social media is, again, at the heart of so much that is going on in the world at the moment, for good and bad. This is what my second book was about. The more recent book was about the downside, the danger of so much of this technology, and how do we try and manage that? Again, the sorts of things that they were talking about yesterday. These are just illustrations, if you like, examples of this technology, which has been theory, which has been science fiction, becoming real in real time in front of our eyes at the moment, with real consequences for all of us. This is just one further little example, again, in my world, in the sort of consulting, professional services world. I'm sure you all know McKinsey, who are the sort of top dogs of the consulting world and control many of the decisions made by big corporations all around the world. This is a professor at Wharton down at Penn. As an experiment, I fed GPT-4 the official practice McKinsey cases, including the math. It nails it, often better than the official answer. Think about that. The smartest, brightest people in the world, they would say, using this technology, being outperformed by this technology. What does that world look like? Software eating the high-end consulting environment. where guys, again, are making $1 million a year routinely. Are you going to pay McKinsey in the same way that you paid them when you know that they're just using this technology and this technology is out in the wild for free? Software's eating the world. What to do when machines do everything. Again, one final sort of technical slide. Again, you don't really need to understand the detail of this to hopefully get the point. The next collapsing cost is software itself. Software's eating the world. Young kids out of Stanford are making $5 million a year at 28 years old. But that industry itself is going to be disrupted in the way that chips were disrupted, bandwidth, our Verizon friends have been disrupted, storage is disrupted. Now software engineers, these guys, $5 million a year guys, that's what it's going to do to their business. And how do you make a living when something that you were charging $10 million a year for last year is now essentially worth $1 million a year? Do you remember my Rorschach test? Good and bad, Silicon Valley, the new Detroit? That's what I mean by that, potentially. If there's one thing you remember what I say this morning, and I recognize it's very early in the morning, and my brain doesn't work particularly well at this time in the morning, it's this phrase here. X plus AI. X is whatever you do. You're a teacher, you're a politician, you're a coder, you're a musician, you're a film director, you're a doctor. X is what you do. Adding AI to it is how you get to that next performance threshold, that next level of performance in your domain area of expertise. X plus AI. That's the future of everybody's work. X plus AI. Software's eating the world. Software's spreading out into the real world. You may have seen this recently. Grants from the federal government to establish new tech hubs to grow the industry, to inject AI, leading edge tech into all of the jobs that regular civilians all around the world do. This is down in New Bedford, I believe, just announced recently on the 23rd of October. Again, focused on, as Steve, you asked me to talk about the blue economy, focused on jobs in this part of the world. X plus AI in the blue economy. So that's a very progressive, smart thing to do. You may know Brunswick. Do you know Brunswick? They make many of the boats. They have many of was it Grady White, the leisure boats. Very big corporation, $3 billion corporation, and they're injecting AI into all pretty much every aspect of their business: production, supply chain, distribution, selling, the actual boat itself, next generation GPS, next generation sonars, next generation data, in every aspect of that of the boats they manufacture. This is a very interesting chat. You could listen to this chat with the CEO, David Fuchs of Brunswick recently, talking about how they're deploying this technology into all the different aspects of what they do. X plus AI, smart. I used to work for another company called Cognizant, a big technology services company. We did a report, this is a few years ago, but I thought I'd share it with you as well. In this movement of X plus AI, we're going to create the jobs of the future. We're going to automate away a lot of jobs. Software's eating the world. $5 million job, a $1 million job. But we're also going to create lots of new jobs. And we've tried to sort of lay out and speculate on some of these jobs of the future. Here's just 21 of them. Let's think, where's a good example? An augmented reality journey builder. What the hell's that? We don't really even know ourselves. But this notion that in virtual reality and augmented reality, you probably saw the Apple launch of their augmented reality glasses recently, helping people navigate their way through that world of augmented reality, virtual reality. There's going to be lots of jobs created in that area, the technical jobs, customer service jobs, etc. An AI-assisted healthcare technician. Doctors, medicine is going to use AI more and more. And again, in this notion of what was $5 million is now $1 million, something that now you might see a doctor for, in a few years' time you're going to see a nurse for. Because that nurse will be using the technology, X plus AI, to be able to offer you the insight and knowledge that you want that a doctor would be able to offer you today. Lots of examples, and that's just to give you a sense that even though things go away, new things are created. I'm very conscious I'm standing in a college, and that all of this future that I'm talking about rests on, is predicated on knowledge, alignment to where the future is going, teaching people, helping people with opportunities to be able to navigate this future and make a living in this new future. I personally think, here's just some examples of some of the big schools who are focused on this now. My point in bringing this slide up is I think, as a note of hope again, I think a lot of kids are actually very, very smart and have sort of figured this out before older people like me. We're all kind of existentially concerned about this. A lot of kids have been figuring this out for a while. You probably can't see this. Advanced algorithms, CompSci 224 from Harvard. This is up on YouTube for free and has been for a while. 16 million views. Maybe the kids are all right. Maybe they've kind of figured this out before we did. 9 million views for Harvard CS50. There's a great image, I don't know whether you've seen this online, of Mark Zuckerberg, if you know who he is. Most people know who he is. He did this course about, 17 years ago now, and dropped out of it. And there's a picture of his class, and there are about 6 people in his class, in this class. And then the same course about 2 years ago, standing room only. So again, maybe the kids have sort of figured this out, figured out where this is going. But colleges like this absolutely should be focused, and I'm sure are focused on X plus AI, leveraging this technology in the way that they teach and equip the kids of the future with the jobs and the opportunities of the future. There's obviously an academic aspect to this, a college aspect of this, but there's also an explosion of training happening in the corporate world. I don't want to sort of get into a big debate about the future of universities and colleges. It's probably not the right place to do that. You may have seen what Mr. Trump said last night about the American Academy. If you've not seen that video yet, check that out. And some of you might be Bill Maher fans. Late Night with Bill Maher. He was talking about the future of American colleges the other day. Another debate. My point here is that increasingly now the credentials one needs to operate in this future, you probably don't need to go to university. You probably don't need to load up with debt to learn these jobs, because people like Microsoft have so much training material to help kids understand this, figure this out, and educate themselves and particularly on all these sort of leading edge AI things. Again, slightly different debate in a way, but my point is that this is happening and we've got to get on board this train. So that's the book that I mentioned earlier on. And really, the rest of my presentation, because I'm running a little long, I apologize, is just to give you the punchline, if you like, of our advice from this book. And then, given that this is 6 or 7 years old now, and the theory is becoming reality, some thoughts from 2023, if you like, a redux on what that book says. First thing to say is automate everything you can. This is a manifest destiny. If you don't automate it, somebody else is going to. If you're a doctor, if you're an educator, if you're a politician, you've got to think about the fact that you can't essentially outrun this. Halo, make everything smart. Inject sensors like that CEO of the boat company is injecting sensors into every aspect of the physical thing one is making. This room, in a few years' time, this wall will just be a smart wall, glass, Gorilla Glass, like a big iPhone. We won't have things like this. And that will generate data. It'll become smart. We'll create a halo of data and information around that thing. And that will create a huge commercial opportunity, a huge educational opportunity to get us to that next performance threshold. Enhance everything you can, X plus AI. Get to that next performance threshold by using technology. $5 million, $1 million. McKinsey, next generation McKinsey. Nature abhors two things. We all know the first, a vacuum. The second is high gross margins. So again, you can't outrun this. You have to use the technology to drive the price point down. And in driving the price point down, you increase the total addressable marketplace. You create abundance. And this again is what the technology will do. And you have to, in that Rorschach test, you have to be prepared to commit to your future. I believe that the future is inexhaustible. The notion that we're going to run out of things to do is just illogical and an untenable argument. Some people who sort of think that it's the end of the world, I'm not sure I agree with that. I think that tends to be a manifestation of one's own personal age. It's not the end of the world, it might be the end of your world. We're going to continue to invent new things to do with this technology. They're just going to be different things. Here's the redux. These are some thoughts from this year. You've got to understand what's going on. And in my professional journey, it's shocking and surprising and constantly eyebrow raising to me that people don't understand what's going on. People put their heads in the sand. People want to be ostriches. They want to just ride this thing out. They've got a business model, they've got a model for living. They think, oh, I think the rest of the world will go away. I just want to keep on doing this. Untenable, can't do this. You've got to understand what's going on. You've got to pay attention. You've got to get as close as you can to the technology. Every senior executive in every large corporation around the world at the moment, the number one destination they're going and spending time is a little office in not a particularly nice part of San Francisco where the OpenAI office is. Every company, they want to understand this technology. This book, the theory, today, 2023, the reality, there's only about 200 people in the world who understand this technology in real detail. So every CEO is spending a lot of time getting very close to those people to understand the technology and how to deploy it. And what they want to do is X plus AI. master it in your domain. If you're in banking, X plus AI. If you're in education, X plus AI. If you're in healthcare, X plus AI. Because the big money is not going to be in the invention of the technology, it's going to be in the deployment and management of the technology. So master it in your domain. Add the X that only you really understand. And again, that's the way to survive. Some contrarian thoughts, just to finish. I'm a firm proponent of the contrarian view that if everybody else is zigging, I'm going to zag. If everybody's going over there, I'm going to go over there. So if everybody's going over there to AI, maybe I should go over there and run away from this. Maybe I should join the neo-Luddites. Maybe I should just ignore this whole thing altogether. Maybe I should hide. If he is in superior strength, evade him. Sun Tzu, I started with the Chinese proverb, I'm ending with one. A contrarian thought, but it sometimes strikes me on a beautiful place like Cape Cod. Maybe this is where it'll come and find us last. Maybe we can hide here and ignore the rest of the world and eke out our remaining days and hide from this, because this is very, very powerful what's going on. And I do think that it is going to change our worlds very, very profoundly in the next few years. As George Bernard Shaw said, societies rest on a balance between the optimist and the pessimist. The optimist invents the aeroplane, the pessimist invents the parachute. So it's a thing to keep in mind. This is a code red. When Google found out what Microsoft were doing with OpenAI, just this year, in January, they issued a code red. We're toast. Google, we're toast. This is going to destroy us. All hands on deck, code red. I think this is a code red for us all. I think we're at a crossroads. Individually, personally, collectively, corporately, societally. We're at a crossroads in human history. And it's the decisions that people make, again, individually, collectively, now, that determine the future. Which direction? Is this another generation of American exceptionalism? Or is this American carnage? Is this Silicon Valley, the new Detroit? These are the decisions, these are the stakes in this game that are at hand at the moment. A final thought. You recognize this chap? Pablo Picasso. In 1967, he said, computers are useless. They can only give you answers. And I think in 2023, even with this incredibly powerful technology, that's still true. It's the questions that we ask as humans that are going to keep us ahead of these incredible, powerful machines. It's asking questions, which is fundamentally the route to your future and the answer to the question, what to do when machines do everything. Thank you so much. Take some questions?
Brilliant. There has to be some questions. Please.
My question is, how fast is this going to move? I see March of this year really as a turning point because I watched ChatGPT 3, 4, 5. I watched what's happening in the investment field as far as how you're determining what stocks are going to move. And I watch Google, I watch Microsoft, I watch all of these things that are happening. I want the cycle of months. I think the Neuralink is going to have changes in the brain.
Yep.
I'm absolutely convinced we're going to have chips that will go into the brain and that will change our thinking and our thoughts. the question is the ethical part of it and how fast is it going to happen? Is it going to be 2035 as the tipping point? When all of this begins to change, when robotics begin to think for themselves, at the tipping point, you know there's a tipping point that's going to take place. How do we navigate through this field quickly to see what's going on and how to end?
Yeah, that's the question du jour. And the answer to it is obviously very complex. There isn't one answer. It's one question, but there isn't one answer, because in your question is embedded the word it. How quickly is it going to happen? And it depends on a million different things. It in education, it in finance, it in healthcare. So the simple answer is that this is on an exponential curve. From an investment perspective, from a making money, from a pure economical perspective, this is happening now. Reference the FANG vendors, the 7 key technology vendors, making up 100% of the American stock market growth this year. So it's happening in finance now. How does it change healthcare? Yeah, that's a gradual thing over the next 10, 20, 30 years. How does it change the music industry? It's happening now. How does it change politics? It's going to be a gradual evolution over the next few years. So it's a very hard question to answer. It's a great question to ask. I think, again, in the context of X plus AI, that's happening now. That's the future, that's the present. The future is unevenly distributed, as we all know, but it's really very, very distributed, evenly distributed in this at the moment. I think this is certainly the story of the rest of my life. I met a gentleman over there, the youngest man in the room, I think. No, not you, sir. Don't kid yourself. I think this is the story of the rest of his life.
Should the normal rules of intellectual property apply here? Because some people can get very wealthy for corner some of this technology, but it's also a dangerous technology. Shouldn't this be owned by everyone?
One of our, Terry, who lives across the street from me, one of our other neighbors is a patent lawyer in the biochemistry world. And I said to him, you're in the wrong industry, you should be in IT at the moment. Because, any lawyers in the room? All right. He'll give you the right answer. No, this is going to be, your billings are going to go through the roof, because this is going to be a great fight over the next few years. And already you begin to see it shaping up between people on one side who are talking about this in a purely commercial context, ownership of intellectual property, and then you see a whole community emerging around what's called open source, and that this should be completely open sourced. In fact, in the whole debate happening in the UK yesterday, there's a very prominent guy who's part of the Facebook organization called Yang LeCun, who is very prominent, vocal advocate for this all being in the commons, in the open source. When we wrote this book in 2017, one of the first things we discussed, my co-authors and I, was that capitalists are going to love robots. And the notion that this becomes the tipping point in the discussion around inequality, I think is very, very real. Because, and again, this is what people were discussing in London yesterday, the notion that this can just consolidate wealth amongst the 1%. This is, if you follow this in Hollywood, this is what the strike in Hollywood was all about recently. A movie in the future will be one executive, one creative, ChatGPT, That'll be it. How many people work on movies today? You see the credits at the end of the movie, 10,000 people. That'll be half a dozen people in the future, because the technology is so powerful it can replace all of that work. So is that the world we want? Is that the dystopia? Or is that, if you've got a lovely house on the water here, that's the utopia, isn't it? So it's a great question, and that battle is going to rage, and it depends where politically you sort of align on this. I certainly have a very strong sense that, I've mentioned Mr. Trump a couple of times, that Mr. Trump is a product or a manifestation of decisions that were made 50 or 60 years ago to outsource blue-collar work. If we now outsource to robots white-collar work, are we going to be socio-politically dealing with the consequences of those decisions in 50 years' time? You mentioned having the pitchforks ready for the Verizon chat. When the people with pitchforks come for the elites, the wealthy elites, they're not going to be able to distinguish between us moderately wealthy people and the billionaires with the houses on the water. I think the film to watch to understand how this is going to unfurl in the next few years is Dr. Zhivago. And that worries me, but it's a conflict. So you had a question?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you've got 12 executives making movies, I think that's another Batgirl movie that never gets released.
Exactly.
So I just had a quick comment.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about the future of technology and so forth.
Yeah.
And in the 1850s, they were talking about trains and transportation and moving people from days to hours. And in the mid 1900s, we were talking about planes and so forth. And so technology advances and people adapt and they understand how to make better use of it. Now, Jesse James robbed trains, so there were bad players back then. And there were hijackings of airplanes, and there were bad players back then, and there's going to be bad players here. But as humanity, we adapt to take advantage of the technology, and I don't think it's that bad.
Aristotle was famously against writing. That was the technology of his age.
That's correct.
That's going to destroy society. Maybe he was right. Freud, much of Freud's original thinking was, there was a huge debate in European society at that time that schizophrenia was a manifestation, a product of riding on trains. So we've always had scares around technology, and you're absolutely right. Many individuals, including Ned Ludd, I said be a neo-Luddite perhaps, people who wanted to smash the machines in the 1780s, many individuals do not adapt to technology. But we wouldn't be living in the society we live today, for good or bad, without the technology. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, again, that's the good and bad of it. Quite a few questions. So you're next.
I was curious, I read Botsford's book, Superintelligence,
Yeah.
that talked about AI
Sure.
kind of taking over, and I wondered if you could address the idea that we may become, slaves to the machines.
Grace Jones, Slave to the Rhythm. Yeah. Yes, that's a very influential book. He hasn't followed it up, which I think is interesting. Again, I mean, you can put these two thoughts together. People have been scared of technology every time there's a new technology. The notion that you said in terms of chip implants and Neuralink and this hybridization between humans and machines, I still think it's a little bit far out. And I think that's an interesting, he's a philosopher. My degree is in philosophy, what it's worth. he's a philosopher. I think that's too far out to really have a strong read on.
Okay, even with the exponential.
Yeah, I think that's still a ways out. I mean, again, it's science fiction. It's interesting, but a little too far out. I think. Yeah, but it's a good book. So,
Well, to kind of follow up on what Peter
Yeah.
was saying from the advancements of technology, probably bringing it to a more recent window. You know, you had, this thing used to be the size of probably this whole building.
Yeah.
And clearly increased people's computing power. The internet gave everyone in the world access to the collective world knowledge. You can argue that a little bit. And those have all been, major technology shifts.
Yeah.
I guess, do you see anything fundamentally different between those technology shifts? Because all these arguments were really the same thing. And does AI present a different threat?
it does, because the power of the underlying technology, the density of technology in our life, the combinatorial factor of different technologies coming together. There was a question, Steve, you harvested from somebody who was going to be here but couldn't be here, around quantum computing. And I don't know whether people are familiar with that or following that, but, and again, we sort of touch on this in the book, but there are computers emerging now with this different underlying programming structure that can do a compute, do a transaction, which would take even a powerful supercomputer today 10,000 years. They can do it in 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So what is a world where we have incredibly powerful technology I've been talking about sitting on top of incredibly powerful fundamental processing power, like you say, far beyond
Any access to knowledge through the internet?
access to knowledge? Again, in the economics of things, value comes from scarcity. What is a world where knowledge is no longer scarce? Anyone been to London? I'm sure you've all been to London back in the day. The taxi driver, do you remember the black cabs? They had to learn the knowledge. 3 years, this is pre-GPS and Uber. They had to have spent 3 years learning every street in London. That was called the knowledge. And those people, blue collar, working class people, not, but smart people, they could make a good middle class living from the knowledge. Now that's Uber, that's a piece of software. And the economics of that completely collapsed for those individuals. Software's eating the world. All of the economic value is now owned by Uber, by the capitalist who's living in the house and the water there. So that's, to me, a canary in the gold mine. The Wharton professor talked about the canary in the gold mine. That's the dystopian view. But again, the underlying technology is the manifest destiny. We're not going to stop inventing this stuff. We're going to continue to invent this stuff. That's why these are such, big stakes, and why this is the great story of our time. So,
I understand some of the commentary here.
Yeah.
Something I thought about too is I saw this chart a long time ago, and it was fires over here, and it just showed the exponential rate of change over like 100, 200 years, whatever the period of time was. And growing up with these technologies, Google and whatnot, I remember being very young and going like, wow, this is so empowering, this information. There's a lot of people I grew up with that just didn't know how to, use that tech, and it's something that, was empowering and advantage, as I grew up. And I'm still on the younger side, but it's crazy to see that, people younger than me are growing up with AI and the tools that they're getting and how they're feeding into these systems that are expanding those data sets. I'm at the point right now where I'm seeing in my life these data sets that, use social media and they just know everything about you. And, they're really good at trying to understand those behaviors. So we're getting to a point where not only is the data really good, but the tools are kind of growing so much beyond our kind of understanding. I see though the evolution of the tool set that we have right now, it is really truly so hard to kind of predict how quickly it's going to move and what it's going to be safe. I think from what you're saying, it sounds like the things that are going to save us, that some of the new technology-based things, the things that we can't, as usually replicate with, say a robot and AI, it's that human to human.
Well, no, that's exactly right. And I think, again, in this sort of contrarian zig when everybody's zagging and hide, I think there's going to be a renaissance of human skills, interpersonal human skills, bedside manner. I think, I came here 25 years or so ago from England, and America around the world then was famous for its customer service. I've seen customer service in America. I'm sure you've seen this.
What's this you speak of?
Anybody in Falmouth know the Windfall? You go into the Windfall, and the kids on the checkout desk, they don't look up, they don't say good morning, hi. They used to. All of those interpersonal skills have withered because they've got these incredible, powerful technologies, so they're looking down at it. I think one of the phrases I've used for many years is, again, in answering this question, what to do when machines do everything, is don't be a bad robot. Because lots of human work is sort of robotic. But now the real robots are showing up. If you go to a Uniqlo, Uniqlo on Newbury Street, there's no checkout clerk now. You just have your basket of clothes, you put it in a reader, and it all does it automatically. So that robotic job has been replaced by real robots. I think the human value is going to be, and that's why I showed the Morgan Stanley wealth management example, the human on top of the machine, the bedside manner of the human. We want, I don't know about you, but I don't want a robot doctor. I don't want my kids to be taught by a robot educator, but I want that doctor and that educator to have the best technology to do the robotic elements of the job, but then to have a good bedside manner. When I see my financial advisor, what's going to differentiate this financial advisor from that financial advisor when we know they're using pretty much the same technology? It's going to be the bedside manner. If you're going to McKinsey and they're charging you $2,000 an hour, they better give bloody good meeting. They better, hi, Mr. Pring, great to see you. Would you like a gin and tonic? How are the kids? How's Manchester United doing? Let's talk, because the machine's done all the work. I want a good human interface on that. And that's interpersonal human skill. I think one of the unintended consequences of all of this, one of the hottest things, and I think, I'm sure the community college could think about this, is that the renaissance should be of, do you know what Swiss finishing schools are? Debutantes, wealthy young ladies in Europe used to be sent to Swiss finishing schools to learn manners and decorum, and I think there'll be a renaissance of Swiss finishing schools to relearn the human interpersonal skills that we need when machines do all of the fundamental underlying transactional work. Steve, I can tell.
No, we're getting to 9 o'clock. No.
robots.
You are welcome to continue the discussion, but I wanted to thank you very much for some brilliant insights.
It's my pleasure.